Imagine you are a mostly naked primate called a human, living a couple 100,000 years ago. And now imagine that you've just had a revelation. Maybe you've invented a cool new way to tie rocks to sticks, or maybe you've figured out where to find a bunch of hopefully edible mushrooms, or maybe you've discovered that Grupp is having an affair with her tennis instructor, Bungo. Now, since you are a social creature, and your survival is dependent on the well-being of your primate brethren, you aspire to share this knowledge with the other apes. But how? A human might utilize the meaty membranes in their necks to vibrate the surrounding atmospheric gases, modulated by fleshy flaps at the start of their digestive tracts. These gas vibrations can then make their way into one or more human ears, which, in addition to being impossible to draw, contain a complex apparatus of flesh, bone, fluid, and nerves that convert the vibrations into the conscious experience of sound. So far, these are all fairly standard equipments and procedures seen in much of the earthly animal world, and sounds emitted this way are frequently used to convey ideas, such as, I am a threat, I am not a threat, I think there's a threat, and would you like to have sex? Those four expressions cover pretty much all animal communication, but humans take it a step beyond by further refining these grunts and utterances into speech, encoding dense amounts of abstract information into these sounds. So sounds become syllables, syllables become words, words become sentences, sentences become memes. This is called language, and it is likely the most important invention in human history, besides, beds or something. At its onset, language was used for entirely practical reasons. This mushroom poison. This mushroom safe. This mushroom kinda poison, but eat it anyway, it's awesome. And now language can be used to express multiple thousand-word essays about which Metal Gear Solid character is the most gay, wasting hundreds of hours of time because it's obviously Vol'jin. But somewhere along the way, humans ran into a problem of permanence. Conveying language via speech has a short range and is limited by the memories of its extremely fragile users. It doesn't matter how good an idea is if everyone who knows it dies from eating poison mushrooms. And so, at some point, some very clever humans started using abstract markings to lend a bit more durability to their language. These glyphs could represent sounds or whole words and concepts, and would be carved into stone or clay, or brushed onto dead plant material or dead animal skins. But eventually it was discovered that one could grind up a bunch of tree fibers and press it into thin sheets called paper. Paper would prove to be such a good writing substrate that I'm literally drawing on it right now, almost 2,000 years later. Now this is called a book. This is a real object that exists in this universe. It is a collection of several hundred paper sheets, a tree pulp lasagna if you will, and each page has hundreds of communicative glyphs, and if you're lucky, some pictures. These flimsy rectangles are often bound at one end with glue, which may or may not be made of horse? Jesus Christ. And speaking of Jesus, one of the most popular forms of book is called a holy book. These come in many different flavors, and usually describe some historical events that probably happened, a bunch that almost certainly did not happen, and a smattering of philosophy and guidelines for living a good life. Probably not a big deal, you might think, but pretty big deal, it turns out. We'll get to religion in another video. What could go wrong? Anyway, originally books would have to be written manually, with human hands and, a feather. This was actually a pretty good job, until some German guy invented an overly complicated stamp, and all scribes were suddenly unemployed. For hundreds of years, books were the primary method of information storage, despite their susceptibility to fire and mold and having coffee spilled on them. But it was later realized that these letters and words were suboptimal, too redundant, too analog. The superior symbols had been realized, 0 and 1. And with the right methods, this binary language can encode everything from text to pictures to the video you're currently watching. And this is called a USB storage keychain. It can hold enough ones and zeros to encapsulate the entirety of human knowledge, and yet its everyday purpose is to make it slightly more difficult for me to lose my goddamn keys. This is a real object that exists in this universe. It was $15. Yeah, you can download all of Wikipedia, minus images, and it's about 40 gigabytes, and this guy holds 2 terabytes, supposedly. So that's all of human knowledge, roughly 50 times over, or all of human knowledge plus a truly substantial amount of pornography.